A very warm welcome to all of you for joining us at this very important webinar on the EU regulatory update, the EU regulatory framework, which is going to have an impact as we move along on our business as we deal with the European Union, especially after a very attractive FTA. It comes into force, which is expected anytime now in the next 1 or 2 months. In the increasingly globalized market, as you well know, Europe is one of the most important and yet complex destinations for textile exporters. We have been doing business with EU for years, and we've got well-established relationships, and it's a very important market for our textile sector. While the opportunities are vast, as we have seen, because the exports have shown growth, the regulatory landscape is also constantly shifting. In fact, not only shifting, but it's also getting rigid and getting defined, because the EU is well known for this. If the tariffs are being brought down, then there will be measures which we can term loosely as non-tariffs, regulations, standards. So all these things are technical barriers to trade. So all these things we know that the EU is capable of, coming out with. So therefore, the regulatory framework becomes very important while dealing with the European Union. Now, to stay ahead of our business, of the business curve, compliance can no longer be an afterthought. In fact, it must be a core part of the export strategy. So regulations are not something which we have to deal with after they have been put into force, but something which we can plan and start and see and take it as part of our marketing strategy. That is why we are organizing today a session on the EU regulatory updates for textile exporters. This is an ongoing seminar, in the sense that this matter is something which will getting, as we move forward, we'll hear more and more about it. But this first installment we have with a young group of people who represent TEXPROCIL in Europe. I'll introduce them shortly to you. We recognize that for many of you, navigating the EU directives can be a difficult task. And mind you, if you don't keep track of things, it can be very difficult. Our goal today, and through the team that we have, are very young and enterprising people who will really decode this whole regulatory map, is to simplify these rules for our members and provide you with perhaps clear, actionable roadmap to gain success in the European market and stay ahead of the regulatory curve. I'm sure that by the end of this session, I'm sure you will be a little more wiser than what you are now. You will gain more from this theoretical knowledge and also practical suggestions that the team is very capable of giving you. In fact, they will also help you navigate as you go along, move forward in your businesses. Now, this webinar is designed to empower you at product level decision making. So not only some theoretical, but it will probably look at the product level guidance. It will provide information on the following: the clear understanding of EU regulations, reduce risk of shipment rejection, better product level decision making, improve documentation and processes, practical implementation clarity, and that's the most important part here, and compliance tools roadmaps, which this young team has compiled. Now, to lead us through these important updates, we have faculty members from TEXPROCIL in EU. That's the company with us today. Two very young and enterprising gentlemen, Mr. Vishal Kapadia and Mr. Piyush Jain. And both of them are based overseas, and they have been following the EU regulation very closely. Now, let me introduce Mr. Vishal Kapadia. He is the founder and CEO of TEXPROCIL in Europe. In fact, his family has been closely associated with the TEXPROCIL in the earlier years when we were, they were also part of the team which was exporting fabrics out of India. His father, his grandfather were all associated with us. He has 18 years of experience across growth strategy, market development, and regulated technology, helping complex products find their market. He has advised the United Nations, the Global Reporting Initiative, and also the European Commission, the digitalization of sustainability reporting. There's another part the digitalization of the sustainability reporting. How do you report your sustainable measures? He's an Oxford educated, based in Italy, with 13 years of the experience living and also understanding these rules in the European continent. So welcome, Vishal, to this seminar. We also have Mr. Piyush Jain. He's a co-founder and CTO of Cell in Europe. He will co-present the technical demo. Piyush has 27 years of experience leading business and systems transformation and sustainability strategy for large multinational clients, including GE, Hitachi, JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley. He is an alumni of A. Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership. He bridges European regulatory frameworks with India's export economic ecosystem. So they have also been able to map the Indian ecosystem along with the regulatory map of the EU. That would make it a lot interesting for all of us. I encourage all of you to deeply engage with this group of experts, ask questions, take advantage of their expertise. So with this, I request Mr. Vishal and Piyush to take over the session. Over to you, Vishal.
Thank you kindly for the introduction. I'll just check that my screen sharing is working.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for that wonderful introduction. So the objective of the session today is to inform all of you on the new regulatory requirements and also the opportunity with the EU. There's one of the most interesting trade deals. I think the director of the FIEO described it as the mother of all trade deals. As I understand, India is trying to increase exports with this round of deals that it's been making. We have this unique position in Europe as NRIs, and as Dr. Siddhartha mentioned, I have a family history of trading in textiles, so it was only natural that the first industry that we help is the textile industry. So I hope to take you through in this session the people behind what we're building, the landscape and the opportunity, and also some of the incentives that exist to help you actually take on this compliance burden, but also the opportunity of becoming a qualified exporter. Let me see if this is working. Here we go. So I think you already got a brief introduction to us. I'm Vishal Kapadia, and Piyush is with us as well. We came upon this idea because we've seen how systems need to adapt with the new compliance. And both of us have worked on different areas of how do you make this as easy as possible for the customer, for the institutions, whilst leveraging all the new technology around AI and things like that, but also making it really easy for an exporter to say, look, I want to make sure my product gets to market. I want to make sure that when the supplier, when the importer has questions, I can answer those questions. And I want to make sure that I have all the documents and I don't have to worry about it. So this is what we're originating now, and we've been developing first for the natural fibers market. We'll also cover man-made fibers as we go and other industries. So what we'll cover today is the opportunity with the free trade agreement. So there's a landmark deal with both the European Union and the UK. And actually the compliance requirements are quite similar for the two markets. So there's a massive opportunity to get up with compliance and be able to export to both of these markets. We'll talk you through the regulatory landscape. It's quite a complex regulatory landscape. So we're going to dive into a few of the main areas and also talk about the tools we've put together to help you navigate all of these things and to also streamline the process for anyone who wants to get into the market. What buyers expect, I think increasingly importers are really pushing for more from their exporters. I think people might be aware of the sustainability initiatives from other countries that are exporting, for example, Bangladesh or even other cotton exporters that you may be aware of. And I think that there's a real opportunity for Indian companies to position alongside the natural history with cotton, with the fibers and the fabrics that have supplied the world for over 100 years, to actually come forward with this deal as a really, really big opportunity to increase volume and also margin as buyers are becoming more discerning, and they want more in terms of what they get from their exporters as well. So we'll also talk you through the tools that we have. We've surfaced some free tools which are there to help people navigate the ecosystem. And we've also allowed people to come and put in their HS codes and directly look up the products before we even start to help you. You can look at things yourself. We'll also talk a bit about the traceability aspect and the digital product passport, which is a very important aspect, which is going to become more and more central in the EU picture, which allows, let's say, the importer and the end user to see the whole chain of what's happened to the product before it's come to the shelves. And finally, the next steps, there's some government support available for these initiatives. So we want to give you a bit of information about that, and also the practical actions, how we can help you through that journey, or how you might want to go about it on your own. And if there are questions as you go, I can't see the Q&A, so if anyone wants to interrupt me, Piyush, for example, please do.
Can I interrupt actually? A
Please.
couple of people have complained they are not able to hear you fine. So is that a common problem, or everyone else is able to hear him?
Coming clear here. I don't know. Kindly check your
Oh,
own
good.
audios because we can
Thank
hear
you,
it
sir.
very clear here, loud and clear.
Okay.
Check it out.
In that
Don't
case,
worry.
I'll carry on.
Fine.
Okay, fantastic. So last week I attended a similar webinar, which was at the sort of Indian level, and one of the directors of the FIEO was talking about the importance of these trade deals that are being made by India at the moment, and the lessons learned from previous trade deals as well. This is not really my wheelhouse, and I defer to TEXPROCIL and other trade bodies for their view on this. But I do think it's important to mention that there's a really big opportunity with this free trade agreement, that it's really actually meant for exporters. In the past, previous trade deals have sometimes weighted heavily on more imports to India, but there's a really big opportunity now with tariffs dropping. And I think there's some lessons learned, without going too detailed into this, that it's important that you understand the market you're getting into before you start to export. And we want to make sure that everyone's ready so that when they try, they don't fail. And if they do, they know exactly what to do so that there's sustainable, durable exports that are coming from this free trade agreement. So there's some big numbers here. The bilateral trade of $220 billion. And I think we can see that there's a huge reduction in tariffs. I think many of the areas of textiles are going to zero, and across the board, it's approximately 70%. And there's just a big economic opportunity around this, which I think will lead to a lot more momentum and interest from importers as well to seek to bridge this gap and to take on this new export vector. So just a very, very quick overview. I think there was also a poll going back in the background. We wanted to just get a sense of the people on this call, what you're currently exporting, where you're currently exporting, and a few of those questions. So if you haven't had a chance to fill that out yet, please do whilst I'm speaking. So I want to just talk about what's covered here. Piyush, if you have anything to add here also, please do chime in. So within the textile chapters, we just mentioned a few of the HS chapters here that are covered, and you can see that the duty reduction is really quite stark, and it's a really big opportunity for these products to get to market much more cheaply. I don't know, Piyush, if you had anything to add here, just also
Yeah, yes,
for
I
people to hear
do.
your voice a little.
Can you guys hear me fine? Just
You're
thumbs
clear,
up would do.
yes.
So thank you. So while we have used HS codes here, this also includes or the work we are doing here. It also includes the UK, and there is another term called tariff code, and they are generally same. Because they were originated same, but to a separation of EU and Britain. So there are little divergence now. but essentially codes are same, and so we have used HS codes and Terry codes interchangeably. In this, they overlap in terms of the natural fibers. Back to you, Vishal.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that's a really important clarification. And that for every HS code, there is more or less a taric code analog as well. And it's made it very interesting because we've been able to map the HS codes and the taric codes to the actual regulations, which we'll talk you through as we go through as well. So, of course, with the EU deal, there's also the UK deal, and I think this is something I alluded to in the introduction, that the regulatory surface, calling it the same is maybe an extension, but they're very similar regulatory surface. So I think from our side, it's very easy if you're getting set up for one market to get you set up for the other market. And of course, it also has wide-ranging implications and value for duty-free exports. So I'll speak a little bit about the regulatory landscape. So I don't know if you'd be familiar with any of these terms at the moment or all of these terms. So I'll just do a quick overview. And I'll mention also at the bottom, you can see detailed guides for each regulation. So as well as sellineurope.co, we have the docs.sellineurope.co. And you can actually do it without the regulations. If you just go to docs.sellineurope.co, we actually have a lot of information of all of this stuff. If you're that way inclined and you like to read, then there's a lot there which is freely available where we've actually decoded some of these things. It's a bit like a Wikipedia for all of these terms. So the regulatory landscape covers chemical safety with REACH. There's the deforestation, which is mostly for this audience relevant to leather. There's the product passports, which is talking about ESPR and the digital product passport. There's the carbon border mechanism, which is increasingly starting to apply to textiles. And then there's sustainability reporting, which is at the corporate level. Piyush, did you have anything to add on this before I move on?
Thank you. There are a lot, just to add on this one, these are the regulations. And by the way, I'll bring a difference between the regulations and the standard in case it's not clear. So standards are essentially, if you comply, you may or may not comply with the regulations. And in Europe, regulation can have variances by the country or your destination of export. So all of these will be captured in the tool, and we will talk around it as well. And one thing we have to bring in is basically timeline. The REACH, for example, has been in place, and you must be aware of it in case your cotton is treated with certain dyes or chemicals. You have to do certain tests, or your importer might be asking you to do so. But there are a lot of regulations which are either being implemented or already alive. So you will hear more and more about these, and there are certain timelines. So when you go to the doc side, you would be able to see those as well. Back to you, Vishal.
Thanks. So I'll just allude very quickly to this. So this is actually the scope of how compliance works, and I think Piyush already started to speak about this. But before that, I dive into it. I'll talk about what it means in terms of the macro picture. So I think one thing that's very important to understand, or very valuable to understand, is that it isn't just a cost and a barrier that's just friction. It's also a way to elevate the quality of the product that you're selling. So that means you can increase your margin potentially, and you can also increase your volumes because you're just opening up to a different category of importer potentially as well. And the key here is also getting towards these durable buyer relationships where there's repeat orders and they can trust that you're able to satisfy their needs as they're evolving for their customers as well. The other aspect is that requirements are effectively qualification. So the fact that you're able to get into this market with this compliance, defines the product as something special as well. It allows you to access the market that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access fully. And it would be very interesting also in the Q&A to hear about experiences and any sort of friction or any sort of opportunities that people are experiencing, feel free to ping in the questions. I'm not able to see them whilst I'm presenting, but if anyone wants to flag them, I'm happy to talk about them. And of course, the two markets. So being able to get into both markets at the same time is a 2-for-1 deal, which I think we all appreciate. I'm going to just speak a little bit about how compliance assessment works. And I think these things can be a bit intimidating and annoying and boring to look at, but they're also very logical. So the way it comes down to it is you've effectively got the overall, which is legislation, regulation, and then you've got standards. And from standards, you'll have certain metrics and certain requirements that come down. So the way we're approaching this is, from your perspective, you want to understand, what products you're doing, and you've got customs codes, the HS and the tariff codes associated with your products. So that's the first point for us. You put in your HS product code, and you understand exactly which regulations are mapping, and we've done that job in the background to actually understand which regulations and standards map to which products. So then after that, there's the gap analysis. So you need to understand, okay, so we have these products, these are the rules, what do we miss today, and what might we need next year? What might we need next month? And that's where you can do all this for free effectively on the platform, but we understand that people might not want to go through those technical steps, so we can also do that for you. But then, understanding exactly what testing is required, understanding exactly what reporting is required. This is something that we then obviously help with for a charge, as and when people require it. And then that comes into building evidence and becoming buyer ready, having all the documentation, and if it's required, if you're a larger exporter as well, perhaps also assurance from us that you can be clear that there's a if in case of audit, or if you need to be doing benchmarking on what you're building, that's also something we can do. What's very interesting about the scoping of testing is, people can pay for blanket testing, but often you may only need a few things tested to stay in compliance. So we really want to get a bit more precise for you as well on exactly how much testing you need to do and what you need to cover as you go and actually test things. So some key areas for textiles is, of course, chemical safety, the labeling and marking. Chemical safety, I think we just covered, and perhaps you're already aware of. This is quite dynamic because the list is updated every 6 months. The labeling, we're not able to do the labeling, but we can tell you exactly what needs to go in the label. The environmental declarations, and also the documentation and evidence, as I described on the previous slide as well. And this can be technical files, and it can be statements which explain the origin of your materials as well. What's really interesting is there's been quite a big push on the importer side where buyers are already asking questions. I think there's Osapiens, they're a unicorn company now supplying importers with all of the infrastructure actually that we're trying to provide exporters. So they're looking at, what questions you need to be asking exporters. They're looking at, how to make their pipeline easier. So I think it's important also as an exporter to be aware that the questions might increase now. Also, as Dr. Siddhartha mentioned, as compliance becomes more of a not a nice to have, but a requirement, I think you might start to see more questions from importers. And if you're seeing them already, you can surface them with us, and we can start to help with that, of course, as well. There's also the CSDDD obligations. So this is one of the aspects where the supply chain becomes part of the sustainability requirements within Europe, and Scope 3 emissions gets to also supply chain as well, which is around carbon reporting. But effectively, people are more and more interested in the chain that comes before the product is seen on the shelves. It's actually very interesting. If you go to Zara in the UK or in Europe, you'll now see that on your phone receipt, or on the receipt at the till, you can see all of the information about the fabrics, the origin. And what's very interesting is there are initiatives going on currently, and we spoke with TEXPROCIL about what they're doing here as well on the cotton, where, if you're able to show that and you're showing the sourcing, it can actually get all the way to the consumer, which is where the added margin and the added value can come into the picture as well. So in practice, this is something we can actually show you. So I'm not going to do a live demo of the website. You can actually go on sellineurope.co to try this yourself. But I'm just going to show you how the process works right now. So effectively, you put in your HS code, and if you want, and you've got itchy fingers, you can do this whilst I'm speaking about it on the website. So you put in your HS code, you can see your regulation map, which EU rules apply, and then you can explore the regulation, and a lot of it is linked in the docs site that I mentioned. And then you can get a diagnostic which shows the gap analysis and the scope for the products. At which point, we can have a call and discuss how we actually navigate that for you, or you navigate that. So this is a very simple interface, and I hope it's good for also the non-technical among us. You literally can either choose from one of the HS codes below, or type it in. You select the market, whether it's the EU, the UK, or both, and then you click Explore. From that, you get onto this screen where you see the regulations that are identified. So this was for a cotton t-shirt, 6109. And then you'll see that things like forced labor regulation, corporate sustainability due diligence directive, so CSDD that I just mentioned, and CSRD are applicable. And this is then possible to click through. You can see into some of this goes down because they're 15. You can start to actually look at what these mean. And this is like I say, we originated this for free for people to understand. And then in terms of the actual reporting and getting that organized, that's the second half of the product that we have. We're not showing that today because it's a little bit more technical. You can actually use it already. You can log in and start to use that product as it stands. But we prefer to talk people through that to make it easier as well, just for the non-technical amongst us as well. So from that, I would also, I can pause here if there are any questions, or if anything, Piyush, you want to add, or you're seeing any questions that might be relevant at this stage. Otherwise, I can go on to some of the key outputs as well.
So what we'll do is, I think Vishal will go through it, and then we'll
Perfect.
have the QA at the end, so that you
Perfect.
get a full chance. So
That sounds
just
good.
go through the whole thing. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Okay. So digital product passports are very interesting. It's actually effectively a passport for the product that a consumer sees. It's accessible via QR code, and it actually contains information about the composition, the origin, the compliance, the environmental data, and it's kind of being adopted already softly through the ESPR, and the first passports are kind of required from 2027, 2028. So it times quite well with this free trade agreement, as well as exports hopefully are increasing around this as well. And this is something we think is very valuable to get ahead of as well, because every export is going to need to provide structured data on the materials, the chemicals, the carbon footprint, recyclability per product line. And I don't know if anyone's doing this at the moment. And I think this is something that exporters are going to have to, you guys are going to have to get up with as quick as possible. And it's always easier before it's required than as it's required, of course. But this is an interesting scheme, and it also is an opportunity to showcase the quality of what you're bringing. So if you are bringing things which are of higher quality, of higher sourcing, and you want to actually tell a story of that, this is also an opportunity to do so there as well. So the idea, of course, is if you start to collect the structured data for this now, you have a head start on this as well. I think also requests might start coming in early for this stuff as well. So it'd be interesting to hear if people are actually seeing that happening as well. There's also chemical compliance in the chain. So this is something, as Piyush mentioned, you might be a bit more aware of. And I think right now there's sort of blanket testing required with, Ocotex or SGS or one of the other testing agencies. And there's a decent price attached per product for the full screening. But the cross-referencing between regulation and what's applicable is not always there. So it's feasible that you're being overcharged for that if not all of the blanket testing is required. So I think that there's potentially a cost saving here for product-specific scoping. And you can also be more precise in your testing such that you're able to be more ready for the digital product passport and have more quality data that goes straight into the buyer platforms as they emerge as well. I wanted to just briefly mention the domestic systems in India. So there's the KC Track Katsuri initiative, and something that's of personal importance to me is the quality of materials and the brand around the materials. And people know globally about Pima cotton. They know about some of the new standards around sustainability in even places like Bangladesh, where a lot of Indian cotton may go before it goes to Europe because of the sustainability standards that are there sometimes. And I think it's really important because India does have an amazing history. The wheel and the flag and the cotton and independence it's led to a global reputation for natural materials, and people will always want to source Indian materials because of the perception of quality. So where it's possible to link the domestic systems like the blockchain tracking and the supply chain tracking of cotton to the actual digital product passports, we're able to integrate that because we're a digital first solution, and we can integrate that into also the outputs and the reports that you're producing for your importers as well. And then we can also set up for the EU buyer platforms as they emerge as well. So I think this is a very interesting area, and this is something I'm happy to talk about also outside of this session. But I think the gaps, obviously translating this into a way that's legible for the external market, and we want to help build that bridge as well for you as exporters.
Actually, Vishal, couple of questions came up on the chat for the digital product passport, and one of them is about collecting structural data. So, sorry, I'm jumping bringing
Please.
the question in, but it's relevant to the slide we are on. Is basically what someone wants to know that what is can you explain more what is structural data in the digital passport is captured. So and
Do you want to take that one? I think you're actually better on
yeah,
structured data than
I can, yeah. So essentially, it's a to be honest, digital product passport is if I can take liberty of saying that it's pretty much all the compliances in one QR code. And one critical thing here is this is actually uploaded in the central, or it will be uploaded in the central European server, where like all the link and all informations will be uploaded as part of the regulation. And that includes like the source or origin of the, say, if you're looking at a cotton t-shirt, where the cotton was originated or where it was produced, what processing took place, what are the compliances, chemical and processing, and the sustainability related disclosures that and that would eventually include the life cycle analysis as well, like if that t-shirt is not sold, what would happen to it. So these kind of things we will have to disclose in our regulatory disclosures, plus the digital product passport will have a link to all of that information. It's quite like a food label on your back of your food packaging, but much more detailed. So I hope I have answered your question in entirety.
Thank you for taking that, and of course we've got time for more questions at the end as well. So I think it's an important one to explain as well. So thanks for taking that. I'll just go onto the structure of how we're trying to get people ready for the market as well. So alongside all of these resources and the free resources that are there, we want to help people get into the market and prepare. So we're aided by technology, which hopefully makes it cheaper. And we are able to get you from diagnostic to being buyer ready, we say in 90 days. I think it can be faster in some cases. It will always depend on the testing and the scale of the operation and the regulations required. But effectively, right now, you can already see phase one is very much live in terms of the product regulation mapping, the gap analysis, and that testing scope. And then effectively, after that, it's about getting the documentation right, and being prepared for requests that are going to come in, and also responding dynamically to requests that are coming in. And finally, being ready for queries. And I think depending on your size and the volume you're doing, we can actually look at doing some benchmarking for sustainability claims. We can do some testing. We can actually help you go deeper as well. And sort of assemble this evidence package so that if there are any questions, you can dynamically answer, and we can also help you dynamically answer as well. And yeah, I think where our solution is quite helpful, hopefully, is that you can start just with the product codes that you're using, and we can guide you through the whole process, really. As opposed to, the traditional processes, you look at the legislation, you look at the standards, you look at where you're exposed, then you look at what products you're doing, and then you try and figure out that mapping yourself. It can take weeks, honestly. And then you still might get requests that you don't really understand or you don't know. So I think, many people, maybe, I don't know, it'd be interesting to hear people's experience. There may be a tendency to ignore things and see what comes up. And that's not really a good option for Europe, because there are more penalties and more, potential relationship defining problems which can come up with compliance with the European Union as well, which, I'm happy to dive into in more detail if it's relevant. So as with anything, when there's a cost associated, it's always nice to know there's support. And there's government schemes that are originating at the moment, and I think they're just being finalized at the moment. So my understanding is that there's an export promotion mission where inspection costs, testing fees, certification, or audits and traceability can be covered, between 60 and 70% of the cost, depending on your status, etc. And I think this is something where, trade bodies might be better to guide, but this is something that we're also nudging people to look at, because, some of the costs of what we're helping you set up will be potentially covered, and you may be able to do it much cheaper than you expect, which is always nice. And I think this is also part of the movement to actually help exporters benefit from this free trade agreement. So it's not just importers. So it's not just exporters from the EU, it's exporters from India as well. So next steps. So I would really recommend maybe take a screenshot of this and feel free to go through any of these QR codes. I'll start right to left. So the regulation guide on the right is effectively an encyclopedia, and we're going to update that dynamically with regulations as they update as well. The middle one, I think, is a good one to just try out with your product and see what actually of your products is mapping at the moment. And on the left, that's the diagnostic. That's where you can call us. You can say, look, we want to get started with this. So just take a screenshot of this, and you can also email or call us for any sort of engagement you would like to start. And we're also very happy to hear feedback on what it is you're actually experiencing yourself, and what you need and what you don't need as well. But please obviously take the time to reach out to us after the webinar and try the product yourself if it's something that you need and that you're interested in. And with that, I'd like to pass back to TEXPROCIL and also open up for questions and say thank you for paying attention.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you very much for a very lucid and a very clear presentation. You are also very clear, and you can see the importance attached to what is being spoken of today, the regulatory framework. Some of these are expected to come into force 26, 27. So the landscape is there, what buyers are started looking at, what the tools are available, and these two young people have already worked out a map, how they can help exporters on the basis of the HS line that they are actually interested in. And then what is it? If you sort of punch in the HS line, you get the regulatory map for that particular product, and then the way forward from that. So that is a very, what shall I say, a very simple module, which is in fact, it's a very helpful module, which will allow a lot of us who are, caught up in this regulatory maze, who frankly really don't know which rule is applicable where and to whom. So that's a very important. Somebody asked a question whether it's applicable to garments, and the answer is yes. So right from where the cotton was produced to where the garment was sold, and if it was not sold, what happened to it. So we are going to that, which is even including textile waste. So that also is a component where somehow the burden will come on the shippers, because the EU regulation will ask you all these queries and questions. So that's why the DPP is not only carrying you through the supply chain, but also post supply chain, the waste is equally an important module which is attached to it. So it's a very comprehensive set of steps and regulations which will completely capture the dynamic of every t-shirt that we may sell. So one has to be responsible for every single t-shirt that we made in India or wherever else, and it was exported to the EU and to full mapping. That is the whole idea of this regulatory framework, and our two young people have really decoded it for us. And I must say, very thank you, Vishal. Thank you, Piyush. It's been remarkable. So I open the floor for questions. Kindly feel free to ask. As they already pointed out, TEXPROCIL has two traceability platforms. That is one part of the story. We are tracing the cotton from the farm to the retail end. And we have told a lot of people that they can use that. That is the first stage. We are also here trying to link it to the DPP requirements. So there are a lot of requirements, and that's why we are in active engagement with people like Vishal and Piyush and others as well, to see that we set up a module which bridges the two gaps, as he rightly put it out. The structure is available with us. The compliance system is available or has been developed with us through the traceability mechanism, but that is only part of the story. It has to be taken up to the end, including a system where we can track the waste, which also we're trying to see how to put all these things together. And as we stand today, Vishal and Piyush, correct me if you can. I don't think there is a single integrated platform which perhaps is available, trying to trace it. Everybody is doing it in silos and parts and buyer to seller kind of operation. So no single module may be available. And as you rightly say, the EU server may probably capture every single transaction when it is put into force. So on all these aspects. So the floor is open, ladies and gentlemen. Please go ahead and ask your queries, because this is a very important webinar, and you are advised and encouraged to ask queries. And of course, these two gentlemen will help you, have developed a module. One can also have a meeting with them separately after the call is there. They will left your addresses, and they will sort of navigate also help companies navigate this. So earlier you are prepared, the better it is, because last minute, if you are called upon by your buyer to provide many details, you may perhaps not be in a position to do so, and therefore you may miss the bus. So therefore, I encourage all of you to come in. Please ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Vishal. Hi, Piyush. My
Hello,
name is
Sumit.
Sumit Gill. I just have a question. I mean, with all these, especially the sustainability reporting requirements coming in, Scope 3 is going to be, reporting Scope 3 is going to be a very complex and a very challenging task for every, facility. So, how can maybe Cell and your company help in overcoming this challenge?
I'll
Vishal,
speak briefly, and I
so-
think Piyush will have something to add for sure. So I think one of the benefits of working with us is not only are we originating the digital piece, both Piyush and I have worked quite heavily with sustainability systems, integrations, and and reporting, and we're aware of a lot of the challenges that exist there. So one of the things that we can also offer is consultancy on these aspects, to help bridge the complexity, to come with, sensible solutions. Because the scope 3 piece is very hard, but then there's always a universe of what's possible, and there's benchmarking, and there's tools that many companies have had to adopt, larger companies also, that will kind of help you with in best practice. But we don't exclude smaller exporters as well. We want to help both small and large exporters. But Piyush, I pass it over to you.
Thank you. That's a great question, Sumit. For those who don't understand Scope 3, I'll bring it up just briefly. And I'll bring it up only in the domain of carbon emissions, for example. It can be more complex than that. So in Scope 1 and Scope 2, they are essentially your own emissions. Say if you are a trading company who is just buying and selling the cotton, and basically, and you're running it from say one office or two. So your own own emissions that your activity carbon emissions could be barely limited to the running of that office. That electricity is generally considered Scope 2, and other like some heating and those cooling, AC, and those things are considered Scope 1. But having said that, you are a trader, and your emissions, basically the product you have bought and you are selling, the emissions from the production to the logistics and to the end product, and while we are basically finishing the product, or basically end of the life cycle of that product, the emission emitted in that aspect of the product is called Scope 3. So, and as Sumitji has rightly said, it's a very complex calculation. And not only textile, but pretty much everywhere. And it gets very complex in terms of cement, oil and gas, and so on. And luckily for us, Europe has given us some guidelines, and a lot of academics, companies, corporates, and standard bodies have created models as well. So instead of basically you calculating your own numbers, you can actually use the models to come up with by volume or by revenues, and so there are certain factors which can be used to calculate these emissions, and they are generally accepted in practice. But it may using those models may be a disadvantage for you if you are actually actively working towards reducing your own emissions, or you are working with your own value chain, your farmers, or basically logistical partners to reduce the emissions. Then you are better off basically using your own calculations or your own numbers. But so I hope I have answered your question, Sumit.
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful. I would like to, I think, from raising the hand, from Indian Terry.
Indian Dairy. He has to.
Am I
Vishal,
audible?
you can.
Yeah, please go ahead, ma'am.
Yes. So my question is that how many companies in Europe are actually looking for all these compliances? Like we are very small, micro level company. How do we do and go and look business for, say, in Europe? They're just looking for it. And before even getting the business, we should go for all these compliances and carbon calculations. What is your advice to, say, those micro companies? I think
Good question, madam. Yeah, go ahead, Vishal.
No, that's a good question. So actually, the way we've set this up is also to have a tiered strategy. So we would tier the market as, small, medium, and large enterprise. And I think for the smaller companies, what we really want to give is a very, easy, cheap, accessible product, which gives that first let's say, that first step into the market. Because I think this isn't something that's your business, doing the compliance and the sustainability, but it's something that you need to represent. to the buyer more and more over time. So you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have full audited carbon. You don't need to. If you're a 3-person organization, you don't need to start measuring everyone's petrol receipts. So I think there's always the standard is always relevant to the volume and the scope, and I think there is a degree of logic to these things. So you don't need to overdo it. However, if you want to accelerate your reputation in these areas, there's always more you can do. So I think when you're a small, depends on the product. It depends, and I think this is where I would encourage you to go through the HS code lookup that we've got and schedule a call with us, because we can talk you through this as well. And I think this could also become like a forum for everyone's individual cases. I think we wanted to cover the high level here and then take calls afterwards so that everyone has the chance to speak and understand as well. But effectively, I think, getting something simple set up in terms of sustainability, let's say the example that I mentioned, the product level sustainability reporting, then you're avoiding the corporate level, you're avoiding the deep carbon audits. But maybe you're looking at traceability, maybe you're looking at the type of cotton you're using, is generally a good practice. I don't know if Piyush, you had any nuance to add to that.
I can actually. Actually, you covered it very well, Vishal. Actually, I'll bring a little perspective from the European regulation point of view, including UK. Thing is, these regulations are pragmatic. They don't just simply come up that okay, this is a rule, comply now. There is a lead time where there is a consultation period. The industry voluntarily engages with them, and basically generally bigger houses play a role, and they find some issues, they basically resolve those, the regulatory bodies with the working groups. And I'll give you an example. CSRD has a threshold. CSRD, while it's a disclosure at the group level, it applies to a company of 500 million plus or 500 employees plus. It does not apply to smaller houses. Though it does not prohibit you to basically measure your own emissions, it's a great marketing approach as well. If you take your simple emissions, if you use models to come up with it, it actually sells very good. I will like to bring an example of Patagonia. So uh, they whenever they want to, they actually went on and made a campaign that do not buy this jacket, and that jacket was a mega sell. But they said that this is the emission for this jacket. It emits about 200 kilogram of carbon dioxide to manufacture it, and they put it on the put it in the on the showroom floor, basically shop. Go ahead, please do not buy if you don't need it, and it actually sold much bigger. Right, so it's a simple thing. They are being honest that a lot of carbon is being emitted to make this jacket. So similarly, this kind of transparency is appreciated by European customers and consumers, and there are a lot of this entire market is scattered with a lot of case studies like this. Back to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's always about scale. So, I'm quite familiar. I worked with Zalando. Zalando is one of the largest e-commerce fashion houses in Europe. I guess it's at the scale of something like, I guess, Flipkart. I don't know how big Flipkart is these days. But let's say Flipkart 5 years ago it's a 7 or 8 billion market cap company, Zalando. They do these sorts of initiatives, and they do these sorts of initiatives because data is valuable. And I think increasingly, whether you're small or large, it can be a differentiator. There was another question here. India currently just holds 2 to 3% of textiles exported to the EU. I'm not sure where that figure comes from, but we looked at kind of the relative exports to the EU and textiles, and Bangladesh has done very well here because of the strife it came from. So there was the Rana Plaza factory collapse in Bangladesh some years back now, maybe 18 years ago. And then because of that, the worker standards were investigated heavily, and Bangladesh lost a lot of trade, a lot of exporters. People just wouldn't go to Bangladesh; they'd go to the next cheapest country. But since then, the government reacted, the exporters reacted, and also the importers have reacted to control the supply chain, to make the reporting more effective, etc., etc. and now obviously the exports have grown there. And I think right now there's an opportunity for small exporters, medium exporters, large exporters to actually start to promote themselves as sustainable. Also, often Indian practices are sustainable, but they're just not told. So some of it is storytelling, some of it is data origination, and the key is to make it relevant to your own product.
Oh,
Okay,
well,
who else is there? Anybody needs-
Vishal and Piyushji, thank you so much for explaining this. I wanted to ask that Indian government has introduced the Z compliance to look into the emissions. Does that help exporters in Europe?
I'll take that one, Vishal. The short answer is yes, but it might actually work other way around better. So European reporting requirements are more comprehensive, and the thing is, I'm not sure about this specific regulation or this requirement you mentioned, but I'm quite aware of the BRSR, which is applicable to all the listed companies. Indian government is proactively working towards disclosures and around sustainability, but I think those are mostly restricted around the carbon dioxide emissions, not other aspects of sustainability like Europe. So if you look at your target markets and if you comply, very likely the Indian compliances will be easy for you.
I think you're right. And if I may just come in on this, there are, in fact, there is a Gazette notification which has come out where emissions, they have GHG emissions for the mills have been prescribed. For the large manufacturers, there is a prescription that by in the next 2 years or so, their emissions will be like this. So there is a targeted effort on the part of the government of India to deal with the manufacturing community, especially on the textile side, by trying to company-wise prescribe some ceilings on the carbon emission. The gazette is there. So yes, there is an effort, but how it translates into something which the EU will accept, because EU will have its own set of reporting. So that remains to be seen. But yes, efforts are being made on that side on the spinning and the weaving side. Some of the big companies have received these proposals where they have been asked to reduce their emissions in the coming year. So that is a program which is already there. Anybody else?
This is actually fantastic input there. And
Yes.
one more thing on this one is the emissions are basically the government will actually start asking to reduce emissions over the period of time as well. So the first thing is you measure your emissions, and then eventually you have to reduce on in ongoing. This is the approach which European and the UK and Singaporean market governments have taken, and I think the Indian government will follow this approach.
Yes, absolutely right. You're doing it. Anybody else, sir? Please, or madam, please come. Any queries, questions? Anybody raise the hand? Any other point?
Indian Daily.
Piyush, can you just go to chat and just read the questions?
Indian Daily.
Blue Sign and Ecotex. Blue Sign system partner, you are accepted all over Europe.
I see this question.
There's
Yes.
I'll take a bit of it, and Vishal, please add on what
Please.
So I'm assuming, that these are the companies, corporates, which are offering certain certain standards and something like fair trade. I'm assuming that. If I'm wrong, please let me correct me there. So these in other domains, like lot of standards and standards have evolved, uh, owned directly by the bodies, corporates, or academics. And I have seen in the financial domain, they have eventually started merging into one. And more or less they overlap. And there is always a baseline principle or baseline standard or framework which these guys build upon. So as long as you're aware that the acceptance of this, if you think that acceptance of these standards and the cost associated with it is justifiable, it will help you. But on the contrary, I'll also give you an example on certain fields where basically some labor standards were relevant 7, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Nowadays, those organizations are still asking for like 8 to 10% of the turnover for that certification to be maintained. So watch out for those traps as well, and those compulsions or monopolies or brand acceptance uh, criterias or which can be expensive. So be aware of what underlying standards or frameworks they are following, and as long as you're with the spirit of those, you should be okay with or without them. I hope I have
Yeah, well
answered
said.
your questions.
Yeah,
I
I can
have a
add some.
question.
I can just add something to that really quickly. So
Oh, all right.
with these frameworks, I think this is something I was trying to allude to in the slides as well. Like, effectively, so Blue Sign and Okotex are I think EU frameworks, and the adoption is kind of part of this challenge. It's like what's relevant to you, you know. So I think this is where we want to help you understand what's relevant and how it crosses over with things like ESPR and REACH. So there's some compliance and there's some badging as well. So the marketing aspect is there as well as the compliance aspect, and that's why it's been very valuable for these Chinese exporters because they're able to lean into the marketing story as well as the compliance story, which is something that we also want to help you do and figure out that roadmap.
Mr. Vinay Devasani?
Yes, yes. So my question is, Pakistan has already dominated the EU market. Like as I've been there and I've seen it like with my own eyes, and also there is that they are not look like most of the buyers that I've had conversation with. They were saying that they like they are not exploring new markets or they do not I mean they are like what we say they are already having their own supplies to them. So how will we go and be competitive there? Like how will we make a good base in the European market? So that's my question.
I can take this from an interesting perspective. So my grandfather started his business in '53, and my father may also be on the call today. Promoted and developed that business in the '70s and '80s. And there was a quote that he had, which is, textiles is cyclical. There's always shifting. Every 10 years, every 20 years, there's a shift. And our family business, we imported and exported from many countries over the years. And right now, there are things that are in fashion, right? Pakistani cotton, for example, Bangladeshi cotton, for example, may be in fashion. But the fashion is also influenced by the market and what people are doing in the market. So if you're, and now is an opportunity, this is where this huge opportunity originates, that with the free trade agreement, there's a lot more awareness of India as a player. There's a lot more awareness of the value of sustainability within India and within the importing markets. And there's a history as well of sustainability within India that can be referenced and utilized. So I think it's not, as an entrepreneur, I would always say, look, don't just look at what's being done, look at what you can do.
Yeah, I get your point. No, I'll comment on this. It's okay. Now, you must understand, Pakistan has what is called, they showed it in the slide also, there was zero duty access into the European market. And this has been going on from 2011 and 12. And as Vishal mentioned, if you go to the years when we had quotas, our quotas were much higher than the Pakistani quotas. So over a period of time, the tariff played a role. Now, with the FTA coming into force, where we will also have a zero tariff access into the EU market, we are going to actually give a good competition to all our neighbors who are there and who have some advantage. So whether it be Pakistan, whether it be Bangladesh in garments, or anybody else, for that, even Vietnam has a zero duty. Practically everyone with whom we compete was having a zero duty except China. So now with this coming in, hopefully this will be announced in the next 2 months. Then you will find that there will be a slow, Indian business will start reasserting itself. And I must tell you that India is also one of those, countries with which has got good sustainable practices. It's not as if we are doing nothing. Our companies are, well socially compliant and compliant companies. And I must tell you that. And all of them have put in a lot of investment and are taking due care of all these requirements globally. So already, as he rightly pointed out, we seem to be much better prepared on the sustainability plank. We will have the tariff advantage, which we did not have. Even as we speak, we don't have it. So it will be implemented as and when it comes in the next 2 or 3 months. Then what shall I say, the whole scenario will change. The marketplace will respond differently to it. So even these friends who are saying that we already are dealing with Pakistanis or they got a large market share, well, there will be space for Indian goods, which will slowly, I would say, start, eating through the Pakistani share, if you want me to put it like that. So definitely the opportunities are going to come in a bigger way than they have been so far. So that is the whole idea. So that's why the presentation began with the FTA framework. Then it looked at the compliance burden, which may probably also accompany it, and not only for us but across the world. It's not as if we will be only be asked to bear the burden of compliance, but all suppliers across the world, I'm sure, are going to bear the similar practices and abide by the rules, the regulatory framework of the EU. So that would be my take on this. What about Mr. Dell? Who's this? Can you announce yourself?
Yes, this is Salil Chawla. I represent DFU Publications. Is it allowed for
Bolliye,
media
Salil.
to ask a question, sir?
All right, sir. All right. Now that you're in it, please do. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. First and foremost, I must compliment Dr. Siddharth for underscoring this, that Indian industry is already invested heavily into the textile sustainability practices. Not only that, you also said that it's not that they are doing nothing. I think this is the fact which has to be highlighted, and no better person than you to highlight this and make it loud and clear known to them. The quick question I need to ask is, how can India's fragmented, cost-driven textile ecosystem realistically meet stringent EU sustainability mandates without a deeply embedded compliance mindset across MSME and informal units? I want to highlight that mindset comes first. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Bolliye. I'll also chip in, but go ahead, Vishal.
Could you just repeat the question? So you're asking could you just summarize the question?
Let me repeat it. I said, how can India's fragmented, cost-driven textile ecosystem realistically meet stringent EU sustainability mandates without a deeply embedded compliance mindset across MSMEs and informal units? I hope now I'm clear.
Yeah, no, I understand the question. Thank you. So there's a macro and the micro to it, and the micro is logically, just do what you can, where you can, and the regulations are there for a reason, and they're not that. They seem complicated, but they're very nuanced as well. So as I mentioned earlier, there are things like volumes, there are things like product type that will make what you need to do relevant. The mindset on the macro, I think the market opportunity should drive that. And I'm not necessarily the best person to comment on this, but when there's a market opportunity, people can change their behavior. Simple, right? And I think if the market opportunity isn't there, then people won't, and if it is, they will. So I think it's partly education, partly drive, and partly mindset as well. So I think yeah, it requires a bit of entrepreneurship, frankly, in my opinion.
Well taken. Can I just come? You want to add anything, Piyu? Are you okay?
I think you're quite best placed to answer that question.
No, I think actually this question should have been addressed to us sitting here, and more than the two gentlemen who are sitting outside, and trying to give you a macro picture of the regulatory framework. What is going to come our way? That is the point they're making, and I think that's the first step. One must understand and get sensitized to what are we expecting to come our way. Now, if it's going to be a tsunami of regulations, a set of things, standards, etc., which we will be required to comply with immediately, urgently from day one. Therefore, there will be a need for preparedness. So, two levels at which we are working, I think they themselves put out in their slide. Government is very aware of this. They are aware of the fact that compliance is going to increase. So there was a slide, government support available, which they put out, Vishal put it out, and where government itself is sensitive to the fact that they may have to step in with some financial support for the ecosystem of MSMEs, which you said is there in India. If 60 to 65% or 70% of the production is coming out of MSMEs. Government is aware of this. Therefore, this DGFT Trace initiative, which of course has got it's broadly available, but there could be some, what shall I say, the fine print may have to be read very carefully to show the extent of reimbursement you might get, how it operates, and all that is being worked out and will be put into place. So that is one aspect where some government support for SMEs is there, number one. Number two, understand the macro situation which is trying to sort of coming your way, the regulatory maps. And number three, I think with these gentlemen also private individuals taking initiatives to tell you a simple program. Look, my FT2 5204 is my HS line. So if I go into that, what is the regulatory likely compliances I am required to do? So I get at least some idea of what am I expected to do. So once I look at that, I will obviously see how to go about doing it. I'm not saying that you go to private enterprise, and I mean those who manage this, but you'll get an idea, and that's where when the buyer also insists, the mindset will have to accept it if we want to do business in Europe. Because unfortunately or otherwise, that is the setup. What we are getting is tariff access, and also what we are now talking about as very loosely as non-tariff barriers, that's what we call it here, but non-tariff compliances, So therefore, compliance burden with a tariff exception. So what the EU tries to do is protect its domestic market by giving you the tariff access, but try at the same time raise larger issues before you of managing the planet, green environment, ecological preservation. These are larger issues with which, of course, developing countries are not so much concerned, but developed countries are fairly invested in. So that's how it is, sir. You will have the government intervention to some extent. It is your own private enterprise, which will probably egg you on, your own buyers chipping in a bit, and then platforms which are made available by people like Vishal and Piyush, which can also be navigated. And hopefully, if if people go to them for some help, they will also give you a good discount on the SME profile of our companies. So they will keep that in mind while they deal with the Indian companies. So this is my take on this. So I think we have to be prepared. There is no option. That is why we are trying to develop traceability mechanisms. We have also put out in our newsletter, if some of you read it, about the DPP, the digital passport. What does it mean? How does it operate? Why we should be sensitive? Because this is something which is really coming up in a big way in practically every platform that we attend. Sustainability. Everywhere we go, we hear this buzzword. So we need to really sensitize ourselves, change our own mindsets, look at options available to us, look at support, look at what we can do privately, initiative, see how we can recover the costs. So all that is part of the business ecosystem that now comes and presents itself as we move forward in the age of what we call the artificial intelligence and many other things which are happening around us. So that will be my take on this. Any other questions, sir?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Piyush. Thank you very much, Charlie. I think anybody? That is his vote. Any other questions anybody has? But it's an ongoing dialogue. It's not as if it's a webinar we do or a small group discussion and then all of us sign off and go home. You're all encouraged to be in touch with us, both with Vishal and Piyush. They've left their numbers, they've left their email IDs, because this is going to be a conversation where we have not had the last word. This conversation is going to go on, and as we go forward into July, August, September, and the FTA coming into force, this conversation will really become resonant. Every room, every business forum. Okay, I think unmute mute yourself. So if there's nothing else, shall we conclude? Can you mute yourself, Mr. Speaker? Please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Okay, I think these next steps, as he said, you take a screenshot of this, go through this, see how it helps you, and then we will try to take this discussion forward. Please be prepared. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say. This is some kind of a warning we have. We need to arm ourselves with all the possible solutions that present before us. And this is the idea of this webinar today. We sensitize everyone. Please be in touch with our teams. Please be in touch with Vishal and also with Piyush. So with these words, thank you very much, Piyush and Vishal. Really appreciate the time you took off. And we will be in touch with each other and take this thing forward.